It all started with a simple, frantic phone call that I should have recognized as a red flag the size of a billboard. My mother's voice was thin and stretched, a sound I hadn't heard since my father's health scare a few years back. She told me my brother Kevin was in some kind of trouble, something vague and financial that she couldn't quite explain over the phone. She needed me to come over, to bring my bank statements, my savings account details. She said it was just a formality, a way to show the family had assets, to prove we were stable. I was 24, working 2 jobs to save up for a down payment on a small condo, and the idea of my savings being a measure of our family's stability felt absurd, but I agreed. The need in her voice was a hook, and I swallowed it whole, believing I was helping, believing I was the responsible son stepping up to solve a problem I didn't yet understand. When I arrived at their house, the atmosphere was thick with a manufactured calm that felt more unsettling than outright panic. My father was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of mail with an intensity that suggested he was trying to set it on fire with his mind. Kevin was nowhere to be seen, which was the first sign that this wasn't about him being present, but about cleaning up a mess he had left behind. My mother ushered me to the table, her hands fluttering nervously as she took the folder of documents from me. She kept repeating how much they appreciated this, how it was just for show, a way to reassure some people that Kevin had a strong family support system. The words were a smokescreen, a cloud of meaningless reassurances designed to obscure the truth of the situation. I asked what kind of trouble he was in, but she just waved her hand dismissively, saying it was a misunderstanding with some business partners. The lie was so blatant, so poorly constructed, yet I found myself wanting to believe it. The alternative was too difficult to contemplate, so I sat there, a willing participant in my own fleecing as my father finally spoke, his voice low and gravelly. He explained that Kevin's business partners needed to see proof of funds, a guarantee that he was good for the money he owed them. They slid a form across the table, a simple fund transfer authorization. It was for my entire savings account, every penny I had scraped together over 6 years of working thankless jobs, skipping vacations, and living frugally. They needed me to sign it, they said, just to move the money to a holding account for 24 hours to prove liquidity. The funds would be returned the next day, untouched. It was a temporary measure, a simple gesture of familial solidarity. I hesitated, the pen feeling unnaturally heavy in my hand. A small, rational part of my brain was screaming, a frantic alarm bell that I was actively choosing to ignore. But looking at my parents' faces, etched with a desperation I had never witnessed before, broke down my defenses. My mother had tears welling in her eyes, telling me how much this meant, how I was saving my brother from a terrible mistake. My father put his hand on my shoulder, a rare gesture of physical affection from him, and told me he was proud of the man I had become, the kind of man who puts family first. They were playing every card in the deck, manipulating my sense of duty, my love for them, my entire identity as the good son. I felt the weight of their expectations, the crushing burden of being the family's anchor, and I signed the paper. The next day came and went, and the money was not in my account. When I called my mother, her voice was different, brighter, almost giddy with relief. She told me everything was sorted out, that Kevin was safe, and that they were so grateful. When I asked about my savings, she became vague again, saying there was a small delay with the bank, a processing issue, and that it would be back in my account by the end of the week. The lie was clumsier this time, less rehearsed. The immediate crisis was over, and with it their desperate need to be convincing. I felt a cold knot of dread form in my stomach, a sickening certainty that I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the years of conditioning, of being the calm, understanding one, kept my voice level. A week later, the money was still gone. My calls to my parents became more frequent, my tone more insistent. Their excuses became more elaborate, more unbelievable. They blamed the bank. They blamed the business partners. They blamed a computer glitch. They never blamed Kevin. He remained a ghost in this whole affair, a protected entity whose actions were never to be questioned. I tried to contact him directly, but his phone went straight to voicemail. I drove to his apartment, but he wasn't there. It was as if the entire family had conspired to make him disappear, to shield him from the consequences of whatever he had done, leaving me to deal with the fallout alone. The feeling of betrayal was a physical thing, a constant ache in my chest. The truth finally came out, not from a confession, but from an accidental slip of the tongue. I had called my aunt, my mother's sister, to ask if she knew what was going on. In a moment of unguarded conversation, she mentioned how relieved everyone was that Kevin had settled his debts with those dangerous men. When I pressed her, she revealed the whole sordid story. There were no business partners. Kevin had a severe gambling problem and owed an enormous sum of money to a loan shark. My life savings hadn't been used to show liquidity. They had been used to pay off a violent criminal so my brother wouldn't get his legs broken, or worse. The casual way she said it, as if it were a perfectly normal family transaction, made me feel sick. The confrontation with my parents was the ugliest moment of my life. I went to their house, my aunt's words ringing in my ears, and laid it all out. For the first time, they didn't have a lie ready. They were cornered, and the truth, or their version of it, spilled out. My father, with a look of grim resignation, told me they had no choice. Kevin's life was in danger. My mother, through tears, defended their actions, telling me that money was just paper, but a son's life was irreplaceable. She asked me how I could be so selfish, so focused on material things when my brother's well-being was at stake. The gaslighting was breathtaking. They had stolen from one son to save the other, and somehow I was the one being selfish. They told me they would pay me back, of course. It was another empty promise, a platitude meant to placate me, to end the uncomfortable conversation. They had no means to pay me back. My father was retired and my mother worked part-time at a library. Their finances were already stretched thin. The promise was an insult, a transparent attempt to manage my anger rather than acknowledge their wrongdoing. They saw my savings not as the foundation of my future, but as a communal family resource that could be deployed at their discretion, a rainy day fund for my brother's self-inflicted typhoons. My role in the family had been made painfully clear. I was the support structure, not a person with my own dreams. In the weeks that followed, a fragile, toxic peace settled over the family. We spoke, but the conversations were superficial, carefully navigating around the massive crater their betrayal had left in our relationship. They acted as if, with the crisis averted, we should all be able to move on. Kevin reappeared, looking relaxed and unburdened. He treated me with a casual friendliness, as if nothing had happened. He never mentioned the money. He never acknowledged my sacrifice. He never thanked me. When I tried to bring it up with him once, he just shrugged and said, "Mom and Dad handled it." The complete lack of accountability, the sense of entitlement, was staggering. He genuinely believed he had done nothing wrong. I tried to rebuild my savings, but it felt like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in it. The motivation was gone, replaced by a bitter cynicism. I was working just to pay my bills. My dream of owning a home now a distant, laughable fantasy. Meanwhile, my parents' focus shifted entirely to Kevin's recovery. They paid for him to see a therapist, a specialist in gambling addiction. They bought him a new car so he could get to his appointments reliably. They co-signed a lease on a new apartment for him, wanting him to have a fresh start away from his old influences. Every one of these gestures was a slap in the face, a fresh reminder of where their priorities lay. They were spending money they didn't have to rehabilitate the son who caused the problem, while the son who solved it was left to struggle. The true extent of their favoritism became clear a few months later. I lost my second job due to budget cuts, and my income was slashed in half. I called my parents in a genuine panic, explaining that I wouldn't be able to make my rent the following month. I asked if they could possibly lend me a small amount, just to tide me over until I found new work, reminding them gently of the money they still owed me. My mother's response was cold. She told me times were tight for everyone, that they were already stretched thin, helping Kevin get back on his feet. She suggested I pick up extra shifts at my other job or find a cheaper place to live. The hypocrisy was nauseating. The family emergency fund, it seemed, was a one-way street, leading only to Kevin's address. That conversation was a turning point. It was the moment I realized they had no intention of ever making things right. They didn't see it as a debt to be repaid. They saw it as a problem that had been solved. My financial ruin was simply a necessary casualty in the campaign to save their favored son. I stopped calling them. I stopped visiting. The emotional distance I created was a form of self-preservation. I couldn't keep exposing myself to their casual cruelty, to the constant reminders that in the family hierarchy, I was fundamentally less important than my brother. The silence that grew between us was a relief. It was an honest silence, unlike the dishonest noise that had defined our relationship for months. Without the safety net of my savings, my financial situation deteriorated rapidly. A major car repair wiped out what little I had managed to save. A medical bill from a twisted ankle put me further in the red. I was living paycheck to paycheck, a tightrope walk without a net. The stress was immense, a constant low-grade hum of anxiety that never went away. I started losing sleep. I lost weight. The joy I used to find in small things, like going out with friends or planning for the future, evaporated. My life had been derailed, and the people who held the switch were pretending not to notice the wreckage. They had salvaged the part of the train they cared about and left me to rust on a forgotten track. It was during this time that I first saw the pictures. A friend from my hometown, who was still friends with Kevin on social media, mentioned it casually. "Looks like Kevin's doing really well. Just saw his vacation photos from Italy. Looks amazing." The words didn't register at first. Italy? I went online and found his profile. It was public, and there it was. A stream of glossy, sun-drenched photographs. Kevin and his new girlfriend posing in front of the Colosseum. Kevin raising a glass of wine on a balcony overlooking the Amalfi Coast. Kevin smiling on a gondola in Venice. The images were a visceral gut punch. They were a catalog of my stolen future, a travelogue funded by my years of sacrifice. I stared at the screen, a hot, bitter rage building inside me. He wasn't just getting back on his feet. He was living a life of luxury. The therapist, the new car, the fresh start. It was all part of a grander rehabilitation project. My parents hadn't just saved him from a loan shark. They had rewarded him for his spectacular failure. They had given him a lifestyle I could only dream of, a dream he had directly stolen from me. Every smiling photo was a testament to their betrayal, a public declaration of his supreme importance and my utter irrelevance. The injustice of it was so profound, it made me physically dizzy. That rage gave way to a cold, hard clarity. My parents hadn't just chosen one son over the other. They had actively sacrificed one for the other. It wasn't a difficult choice made under duress. It was a simple calculation of value. Kevin, with all his flaws, his unreliability, his destructive behavior, was the asset they chose to protect and invest in. I, the responsible, stable, hardworking son, was the disposable resource, the mine to be stripped of its assets and then abandoned when it was no longer useful. They didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a utility, and my utility had been exhausted. I printed out one of the photos. It was a picture of Kevin and his girlfriend laughing, clinking champagne glasses on a sun-drenched terrace. The caption read, "Living our best life. Blessed new beginnings." I folded it and put it in my wallet. It became a dark memento, a reminder of the truth. Whenever I felt a pang of nostalgia for my family, whenever I considered reaching out, I would look at that photo. It was a shield against any potential sentimentality, a permanent monument to their lie and my foolishness. It was the price tag of my stolen dreams, a constant nagging receipt for a debt that would never be repaid. The eviction notice arrived on a Tuesday. It was taped to my door, the stark official lettering feeling both impersonal and deeply, deeply personal. I had fallen 2 months behind on rent, and my landlord's patience had finally run out. I had 30 days to pay what I owed or be out on the street. I sat on my floor, the notice in one hand and my phone in the other, scrolling through Kevin's vacation album. There was a picture of him buying a ridiculously expensive leather jacket in Florence. The cost of that jacket alone would have covered my rent and kept me in my home. The juxtaposition was so cruel, so perfectly symbolic of my situation, that I almost had to laugh. I didn't call my parents. I knew what they would say. They would offer useless platitudes. They would tell me to be strong. They would suggest I move in with a friend. They would do everything except what was right. Take responsibility. They wouldn't ask Kevin to cut his extravagant trip short. They wouldn't ask him for the money. That would be an imposition on his recovery. My homelessness was an acceptable consequence. His discomfort was not. The lines had been drawn so clearly, and I was so far on the wrong side of them. I was in a different country. A country of broken promises and empty bank accounts. So I started packing. Putting my life into cardboard boxes felt like a final admission of defeat. Each object I wrapped in newspaper, a mug from college, a book I loved, a framed photo of a life that no longer felt real, was a relic of a person who no longer existed. That person was naive. He believed in family, in fairness, in the idea that hard work would be rewarded. This new person, the one taping up the boxes, believed in nothing. He was a ghost in his own life, packing up the remnants of a failed existence, with nowhere to go. The future was no longer a road, it was a wall, and I was driving straight into it. A week before I was due to be out, I saw my father. It was at a grocery store. I tried to avoid him, turning down another aisle, but he spotted me. He approached, his expression a mixture of pity and discomfort. He asked how I was doing. I just looked at him, my silence a more potent accusation than any words I could have spoken. He stammered, saying he'd heard about my job loss, that he was sorry things were so tough. He didn't mention the eviction notice I knew my mother had told him about. He just offered empty sympathies, as if he were a casual acquaintance, not the architect of my ruin. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a $50 bill. He tried to press it into my hand. "Here," he said, his voice thick with a false sincerity. "Go get yourself a nice meal." The gesture was so small, so pathetic, so profoundly insulting, that it broke something in me. I looked at the money, then at his face, and I started to laugh. It wasn't a happy sound. It was a raw, broken, hysterical laugh that echoed in the quiet aisle. I laughed until tears streamed down my face. I laughed at the absurdity, at the inadequacy, at the sheer stunning cluelessness of his attempt at charity. He had taken my future, and he was offering me pocket change in return. I pushed his hand away. "Keep it," I said, my voice dangerously calm once the laughter subsided. "You might need it for Kevin's next trip. Maybe he'll go to Spain next. I hear it's lovely in the fall." The color drained from his face. For a moment, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Shame, maybe, or just the shock of being confronted with the unvarnished truth. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a familiar defensiveness. He mumbled something about me being ungrateful and walked away, leaving me alone in the aisle with the echo of my own broken laughter. The day I moved out was gray and rainy, a perfect, pathetic fallacy for the state of my life. A friend with a pickup truck helped me move my boxes to a storage unit, a 10 by 10 foot metal box that would now serve as the museum of my former life. As I handed the keys to my apartment to the building manager, I felt a strange sense of detachment. I wasn't sad. I was just empty. The emotional core of me had been hollowed out, leaving behind a shell that just went through the motions. I had officially lost everything, all because I had trusted my own family. That night, I slept on my friend's couch. I stayed up late, long after he had gone to bed, staring at the ceiling. I took out my phone and, out of a kind of morbid curiosity, looked at Kevin's profile again. He had posted a new photo just hours earlier. It was a selfie of him and his girlfriend, smiling, on a first-class airplane seat. He was holding up a glass of champagne. The caption read, "Off to our next adventure, a little surprise trip to Bali, or YOLO, living the dream." Bali. My savings hadn't just paid for one luxury vacation. They had become his permanent travel fund, his ticket to a life without consequences. And in that moment, staring at his smug, happy face, I didn't feel rage anymore. The rage had burned itself out, leaving behind something colder and quieter. It was a sense of resolve. My parents had made their choice. They had chosen their son. They had sacrificed me for him. They had written me out of the family, not in words, but in deeds, which were so much more permanent. And I realized that my task now was not to fight for their approval or to hope for justice. My task was simply to survive them, to build a life so far away from their toxic orbit that their gravity could no longer touch me. The first step was to sever the connection completely. I blocked their numbers. I blocked Kevin. I blocked any mutual friends who served as their informants. I went into my phone and deleted every photo I had of them, erasing them from my digital life. It was a small, symbolic act, but it felt significant. It was a declaration of independence. I was no longer their son, their brother, their safety net. I was a stranger, and I would build a new life from the ashes of the old one. A life where the word family would have a different meaning, one I would have to define for myself. The next morning, I went to a temp agency. I took the first job they offered, a grueling manual labor position at a warehouse on the other side of town. The pay was terrible, but it was a start. It was honest work. It was mine. As I worked, my muscles aching and my hands raw, I felt a strange sense of peace. I wasn't working for a down payment or a future that could be stolen. I was working for today, for the meal I would eat tonight, for the rent on a room I would find tomorrow. My life had been reduced to the simplest possible terms, and in that simplicity, there was a kind of freedom. I found a room to rent, a small, depressing space in a shared house. It was a significant step down from my old apartment, but it was a roof over my head. I owned nothing but a few boxes of belongings and the clothes on my back. I was starting from absolute zero, but it was a clean slate. There were no ghosts here, No memories of broken promises. Just four walls and a door that I could lock. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of something that resembled hope. It wasn't the bright, optimistic hope of my youth, but a tougher, more resilient kind. The hope of a survivor. I sometimes wonder what they think, my parents. If they ever feel a pang of guilt. If they ever wonder where I am, what I'm doing. I suspect not. In their story, they are the heroes. They are the loving parents who did what was necessary to save their troubled son. My destruction is just a footnote in their grand narrative of familial sacrifice, an unfortunate but necessary cost. They have their golden boy, and he is thriving. In their eyes, the story has a happy ending. They just had to edit me out of the final chapter to make it work. As for Kevin, I doubt I ever cross his mind. He's too busy living his best life, globe-trotting on the proceeds of my hard work. He is the ultimate product of their favoritism, a man-child who has never had to face the consequences of his actions. He exists in a bubble of entitlement they have carefully constructed around him, a world where his desires are paramount and the needs of others are irrelevant. He is their masterpiece, and he is a monster of their own creation. A monster with a great tan and an impressive Instagram feed. I keep that photo of him in Bali. It's no longer in my wallet. It's taped to the wall of my small room, right next to my bed. It's the first thing I see in the morning and the last thing I see at night. It's not a reminder of what I lost. It's a reminder of why I have to keep fighting. It's a reminder that my value is not determined by my family. It's a reminder that I survived their betrayal, and I can survive anything else this world throws at me. It's a reminder that my new beginning isn't in a luxury resort. It's right here, in this shabby room, with every single dollar I earn being my own. This forum post is the first time I've told this whole story to anyone. I've held it inside for so long, a toxic secret that has been eating away at me. Writing it all down, connecting the dots from that first phone call to this very moment, has been painful, but it's also been clarifying. It's helped me see the pattern, the slow, methodical process of my own erasure from my family. It's not just a story of financial favoritism, it's a story of emotional abandonment. They didn't just steal my money, they stole my sense of self, my place in the world. And that's a debt that no amount of money could ever repay. So here I am, living in a rented room, working a dead-end job, with a bank account that is perpetually close to zero. By all external measures, I am a failure. My brother, by all external measures, is a success. He has the trips, the girlfriend, the parental support. But I have something he will never have. I have self-respect. I have the knowledge that I am building my life on my own terms, with my own two hands. It's a much harder path, a much slower one, but it's real, and it's mine. His life is a lie, built on a foundation of theft and deceit. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe I'll be stuck in this cycle of poverty forever. Maybe I'll slowly, painfully, claw my way back to some semblance of stability. I don't have a 5-year plan anymore. I just have a today plan. And today, the plan is to go to work, earn my pay, and come home to my quiet room. It's not a glamorous life. It's not the life I had planned, but in a strange way, it's more honest. There are no illusions anymore. I see the world, and the people in it, for what they are. My parents taught me a valuable lesson, perhaps the most valuable lesson of my life. They taught me that blood is not always thicker than water. They taught me that the title of family is not a guarantee of love or loyalty. It is a title that must be earned. And they, in no uncertain terms, failed to earn it. They are no longer my family. They are just the people whose DNA I happen to share. My family now is the friend who let me sleep on his couch, the co-workers who share their lunch with me when I'm short on cash, the anonymous strangers in the world who show small kindnesses without expecting anything in return. So, I suppose my question for this forum, for anyone who has read this far, is this. How do you rebuild your sense of self when the people who were supposed to build you up were the ones who tore you down? How do you learn to trust again when your first and most fundamental trust was so completely shattered? I'm not looking for answers, really. I know these are questions I have to answer for myself. But just putting them out there, into the anonymous void of the internet, makes me feel a little less alone. Thanks for reading. My brother posted a new photo yesterday. He's in Thailand now, riding an elephant. He looks happy, unburdened. I looked at the photo, and for the first time, I didn't feel a thing. No anger, no sadness, no betrayal. Just a profound and final sense of disconnect. He is a character in a story that I am no longer a part of. His world of luxury and denial is a foreign country, and I have no desire to visit. My world is here, in this room, with the sound of traffic outside and the weight of a hard day's work in my bones. It's not an easy world, but it's a true one, and that, I'm beginning to realize, is a luxury he can't afford. I'm starting a second job next week. Weekend shifts at a coffee shop. It will be exhausting, but it will help me get back on my feet faster. The goal isn't a condo anymore. The goal is smaller, more achievable. An apartment of my own, no matter how small. A place where I can close the door and know that everything inside it is mine, earned through my own efforts. It's a long road ahead, but for the first time, it feels like my road. Not the one they laid out for me, the one where I was just a supporting character in my brother's story. In my story, I'm the main character, and my story is just beginning. My father tried to call me last week, an unknown number, but I recognized his voice on the voicemail he left. He sounded old, tired. He said he just wanted to talk. I deleted the message without listening to the rest of it. There is nothing left to say. Their actions spoke louder than any words they could ever offer now. The door to that part of my life is closed. I have to focus on what's ahead, not on what's behind. It's the only way to move forward, the only way to heal, the only way to build a future that isn't haunted by the ghosts of their choices. The best revenge, I've heard, is living well. I'm not sure if I'll ever live well in the way the world defines it. I may never have a fancy car or take international vacations, but I can live honestly. I can live with integrity. I can become a man my parents would have claimed to be proud of, but whose foundational principles they never actually understood. And in doing so, I will be honoring not them, but the person I was supposed to be before they decided my future was a fair price to pay for my brother's comfort. That is a victory they can never take from me. I have a date this weekend. It's nothing serious, just coffee with someone from my new job, but it feels like a monumental step. For a long time, I've felt too broken to even consider letting someone else into my life. I was an island of resentment, and I didn't want anyone to visit. But I'm tired of being an island. Maybe it's time to start building bridges again, cautiously, slowly, but it's a start, a new connection, one that has nothing to do with my past, with my old family, a connection that is entirely my own. It's a terrifying thought, but it's also a thrilling one. Life is slowly, painstakingly being rebuilt. The foundation is still shaky, and I know it will take years to make it strong. There will be setbacks. There will be moments of doubt and despair. But as I look at the picture of my brother on the elephant, smiling his carefree smile, I realize something. He is a prisoner of his own story, forever dependent on our parents' protection and my stolen money. He has no foundation of his own. I, on the other hand, am free. In losing everything, I found a strange and difficult kind of freedom. The freedom to build my own foundation, one that no one can ever take away from me again. I think I'm going to take the picture down now. I don't need it anymore. I know who he is, and more importantly, I know who I am. My motivation doesn't need to come from his betrayal anymore. It can come from my own strength, from my own desire to build a life of purpose and meaning, however small. His story is over for me. It's time to focus on writing my own. A story where the main character might be bruised and battered, but he is not broken, and the ending has not yet been written. I will not be the collateral damage in my brother's life. I will not be the footnote in my parents' story of misguided love. I am the protagonist of my own narrative, and my journey is one of resilience. They may have stolen my savings, but they unwittingly gave me something far more valuable, a reason to discover my own strength. They pushed me out of the nest, expecting me to fall, but they forgot to consider the possibility that I might learn to fly. It's a turbulent flight with broken wings, but I am in the air, and I am not looking down. This forum has been a strange comfort. Pouring all this out into the digital ether has been like lancing a wound. It hurts, but it's a clean pain, one that promises healing. Thank you to anyone who listened. It means more than you know. Knowing that my story is out there, that it exists outside of my own head, is a relief. It makes it real, and it makes my struggle feel validated. I don't know what comes next, but I feel lighter now, ready for the next chapter, whatever it may be. The eviction notice is still tacked to the wall in my storage unit, a relic from my old life. I keep it there as a reminder of how far I've come, from a couch to a shared room, and next month to my own small studio apartment. It's not much, but it's a kingdom, my kingdom, earned, not given. Built, not inherited. I signed the lease last week, and the feeling of sliding that key into my own door was a victory greater than any luxury vacation. It was the feeling of taking my life back, 1 square foot at a time. I ran into my aunt at a bus stop the other day. She looked shocked to see me. She asked why I never called, why I had cut everyone off. I just looked at her and said, "Some families are a bad investment. I decided to divest." The confusion on her face was almost comical. She didn't understand. They will never understand, and that's okay. I've stopped trying to make them. My energy is better spent building my new life, not trying to get them to acknowledge the destruction of my old one. Their validation is no longer a currency I trade in. The quiet moments are still the hardest. The moments late at night, when the exhaustion wears off and the memories creep in. The memory of my mother's pleading voice, my father's proud hand on my shoulder, the memory of signing that paper. In those moments, the anger and the sadness still feel fresh. But they are just moments now, not a constant state of being. They are clouds passing in front of the sun, not the permanent gray sky that my life used to be. The sun is starting to break through. It's a weak sun, but it's there. So this is where my story ends. For now, it's not a story with a neat and tidy conclusion. There is no dramatic confrontation where my family begs for forgiveness. There is no lottery win that restores my finances. It's a quiet, messy, ongoing story of recovery. It's a story about learning to be my own parent, my own provider, my own safety net. It's a story about realizing that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from the people who are supposed to love you the most. To anyone out there who has been financially burned by their own family, who has been the responsible one left to clean up the mess of the favored one, know this: you are not alone. Your pain is valid, your anger is justified, and your future is not defined by their choices. It is defined by yours. The road back is long and hard, but it is a road that leads to a place of self-worth and integrity, a place they can never touch. Walk that road. You are worth more than what they took from you.